All right, we're ready to get going. Thank you all for your patience. Wanted to give a little more time for folks to join here. But welcome to today's webinar hosted by MessageHears and featuring our two special guests from Snowplow and Snowflake. I'm super excited about this topic. It's one that I've been passionate about for years now in terms of understanding how to capture behavioral data from your customers via your website and your mobile app, and how to leverage that to build predictive customer behavioral profiles, and really drilling into the abandoned cart use case that so many brands are curious as to how best to solve. So we are going to be talking quite a bit about that specifically today, and we're going to be hearing from some of our guest speakers in terms of their perspectives on what's happening in the industry and some new trends around customer data and activation of that data across channel. So let me introduce our speakers here visually. You've got myself, Walter Rowland. I run our partnerships organization at MessageHears. I've been with us about 5 years. You have Luke Ambrosetti, a partner solution engineer at Snowflake, who is specifically aligned to the Powered by Snowflake partner ecosystem. Really excited to have him. And then we have Mike Maloney, joining us from New Hampshire today. He is the Field Chief Data Officer at Snowplow. So that's your crew. Those are your faces. Hopefully we look somewhat similar on screen. In terms of what we're going to cover today, here's our agenda. We're going to hear from Luke first on the Snowflake perspective on composable versus packaged approaches to CDP and customer engagement. You'll hear from me a little bit in terms of what MessageHears is seeing across our customer base and the kinds of use cases that we solve for. And then most importantly, you'll be hearing from Mike at Snowplow in terms of how to dig into capturing behavioral data from your website and your mobile app in order to power abandoned cart engagement use cases. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for a benefits recap and Q&A. So stick with us, please, and keep those questions coming throughout the webinar through the chat interface of the GoToMeeting webinar platform. And I should also remind all of us that we are recording this and we will be sharing it afterwards as well, as usual. So with that, as I mentioned, we do have our guest speaker, Luke from Snowflake, joining us today. And Luke, if you don't mind, I'm going to advance the next slide and let you kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. Appreciate it. So wanted to start this conversation by what we are Snowflake are starting to see. And I think, more broadly, there's been a kind of a trend when it comes to customer data platforms overall, right? So if we just dive in onto what we see when we look at like MarTech stacks, and you look specifically looking at, we're thinking about behavioral data, right? Looking at abandoned carts. That's where a customer data platform can really come into handy, right? And so what we see with kind of this stack today, or it's how it's been up until let's say just now or recently, is that you would have a customer data platform, or brands might have a customer data platform, and their stack might look like this, right? Where they have a CDP, and then they have separately their data platform, data warehouse, whatever you might want to call it, that's off to the side there. And this can be, it can be a good solution, right? But especially when that CDP helps you collect that behavioral data, right? Again, they can abandon browse, abandon cart. They're helping you do that. The issue can be that sometimes, depending on the platform, depending on the use cases, they're not getting the full scope, right? So, sometimes they're not really getting who's going to be converting from that reach out or from that message of who abandoned their cart and the items that they abandoned or the things that they saw. So, that's sometimes where data is locked in your data platform, your data warehouse. And so what you have to be doing is syncing data, in between these two different systems. And that's where you see those lines there. With Snowflake, a lot of the partners that I work with have some platform CDPs have solved this issue, right? You don't have to sync data back and forth. Instead, you can use a data share. That's been one way to solve it, and that can work. Today, though, we're going to really be talking about another solution that's been very popular recently. Is more composable solution, and that's where again our great partners in Snowplow and MessageHears come in. Well, if you can go to the next slide, please. So looking at what that solution might look like. So instead of having a full platform CDP approach, this more composable approach takes a company like or a partner like Snowplow can help you ingest that behavioral data. Mike's going to talk about what they can do, especially when it comes to abandoned cart today. That gets ingested into Snowflake, where you can then go through, transform that data, use Snowflake with Snowplow's help, transform that, create that customer profile, and using message gears, activate that right from your Snowflake Data Cloud to the customer, right? So reaching out via email, push, or whatever channel, it could be paid media as well, to your customers to try and get them to convert on that abandoned cart. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Walter to go further about kind of what this approach looks like and what he's also seen today as well.
Thank you, Luke. Very helpful. Yeah, so this diagram I think is super helpful, and it reinforces actually some of the points that exist amongst some of our joint customers between the three of us on the phone. So when I think about one of our retail customers that we share in common, Snowplow, Snowflake, message gears, it's very, very much in line with this model that you see on the screen, and I'll reinforce that a little bit later, just so folks on the phone understand how all these pieces come together, where Snowflake is in fact the hub of all data about the customer, and then everything else is either feeding Snowflake directly on the left-hand side, or in the case of message gears, just sitting on top of the brand's Snowflake environment as a connected app to power our use cases. So I just alluded to something that I think is really important for the context of today's conversation, which is this notion of a connected app. And really, Tarek at Snowflake, I think, captures this pretty well in terms of the concept of the brand's data cloud platform is the source of truth. It is what the solution provider like message gears is using to power the message gears use cases, and it is known as a connected application model. If you think about that visually, it starts to look a little bit like this picture, which is actually from a friend, Omer, over at Snowflake, who wrote a really good blog about this about a year ago. So there's this 20-plus-year-old SaaS model depicted on the left-hand side, where you've got Snowflake as the brand's data cloud, but you're having to map and copy data to third-party SaaS providers. And that kind of model has been in place for many, many years. And more recently, you have a new approach emerging where the data layer and the application layer are separated from one another. And the data layer is in fact controlled by the brand. It is their data cloud. And then solution providers like Snowplow and message gears either feed into the brand's data cloud, and that's what Snowplow does. They're capturing behavioral data to power abandoned cart and other use cases. And then message gears plugs directly into the brand's data cloud to power our use cases as a connected app, where we are providing segmentation and cross-channel activation capabilities. So the benefits of that, these next couple slides are going to talk through a little bit. So if a brand believes in centralizing their first-party data in a modern data cloud like Snowflake, chances are the rest of their MarTech stack looks a little bit like this, where they have a bunch of traditional third-party SaaS solutions that are having to copy data back and forth. You might have an ESP, like a marketing cloud of some sort. That is a traditional SaaS platform. And if the brand's got their customer data in Snowflake, they're having to copy it to that third-party ESP. You might have a standalone mobile messaging platform like an Airship. And then you might have a standalone segmentation tool like a Unica. And then you might have a third-party CDP as well. And there's many of those. That is a pretty messy landscape. And what we're proposing here and talking about today is a whole new approach, where the Snowflake is in fact the hub of everything for the brand, and then solution providers like Snowplow and message gears just feed into that or connect directly to it. So that kind of model, vastly simplifies things for the brand in terms of really agility, security, and cost. You're going to look at much higher levels of customer engagement as a result, because you're able to take action and provide more relevance much more quickly. And Mike's going to be talking about that in detail around abandoned cart use cases as one example. So this is kind of what we're talking about today in terms of the future of MarTech that many brands are already adopting, where Snowflake is the hub and folks like MessageGears just plug into it directly. And this is my final slide just to set the stage on these trends that we're seeing in the marketplace and that leading brands are already adopting, which we'll talk about that at the end a little bit too, just to remind you guys all of the benefits. But this is really what we're talking about in terms of this modular approach to CDP and customer engagement capabilities, where you're bringing in best of breed for each one of these 6 pillars of use cases. And Snowplow is really best of breed for enterprise behavioral data collection that captures, transforms, and lands it into the brand's Snowflake Data Cloud. And then on the right-hand side, you have MessageGears in terms of the functions that we provide around segmentation and campaign management. We are an ESP as well, so we're natively delivering billions of email, push, and SMS communications ourselves through our own infrastructure that we manage. And then we are delivering audiences to third-party endpoints. I think today that oftentimes is called reverse ETL. We've been doing that for many, many years, and we just think of it as third-party channel activation. So that's going to be your sort of ad tech, call center, and sort of direct mail type endpoints. So this is the big picture. Hope this helped frame it for our attendees today. And now I know I'm really excited to transition over to Mike, if I can do it correctly, to dig into the abandoned browse use cases. So give me 1 second, Mike, and I will transition to make you presenter, my friend. And there we go.
Let's just double check that here. All right. So thanks, Walter and Luke. As mentioned before, I'm Mike Maloney, the North American CDO for Snowplow. So as Walter and Luke talked about, I'm really excited to talk about composable customer data pipelines today and supercharging your abandoned cart. So for those of you that don't know about Snowplow, just a brief overview. We're creators of the customer behavioral data platform. We create and collect customer behavior data and allow you to understand how your customers interact with your product or service. 2 data points I want to point out that aren't on the slide. We've been doing this since 2012, so 10+ years of working with customers on that. 2 headquarters, specifically London and Boston. I'm in New Hampshire, as Walter mentioned before, but 10,000+ customers using our technology on over 1.7 million websites. So as Walter mentioned, a few key differentiators for Snowplow. Really kind of a step change in the quality and descriptiveness of the data. So no one else in the space is collecting the richness of data that Snowplow does. It's scalable, which is going to be key when we're talking about abandoned cart, really low latency. And then future-proofing from a data privacy perspective. It's a private SaaS deployment, so we deploy in your VPC. But for companies that aren't quite there yet, we do offer a cloud setup that will be private as well. Just to talk about a few things below, descriptive richness. So I'm going to talk later about how we capture the entire customer's journey in granular detail. A key point here will be later, the warehouse native ID resolution. There's a number of ways we do that I'll talk about, but how we build a single unified view across platforms and channels and devices. Ownership and control, first party, we're reliable, conversion at scale, we're explainable. So every item is that we capture is purpose built. And then compliance with GDPR, CCPA, or really wherever you operate, we have a number of levers you can use. So why do abandoned cart campaigns matter? So really, a lot of things happen. Abandoned carts are when someone visits your e-commerce business, browses to a product they like, they add these products to the cart, and then for some reason they walk away. this is really important because you have someone who's come to your website, expressed an interest or an intent to purchase, and they've spent the time, they've added to the cart, and for some reason, they've just walked away. Personalized data that's really granular makes it that much easier for you to get them back. As an example, abandoned cart emails generate $3.42 per recipient. That's the highest across all email campaigns and flows. It's $4 trillion in abandoned shopping carts every year. So the key is, how do we get these people back? So abandoned cart campaigns work when we minimize friction in the sales process. So we can remarket products to interested customers, increase sales. Customers who add products to their cart have already demonstrated that intent to purchase. And somewhere along the line, and this is where Snowplow will come in, we're going to be able to map where that friction happens. Is it something along the line where they're going through a checkout process and all of a sudden they have to pay shipping costs? Well, maybe we can come back and look at them and do a next best action and remove shipping costs with message gears or something like that. A common misperception also is that abandoned cart emails are illegal and they don't comply with recent privacy changes. That's absolutely not true. Abandoned cart emails use first-party customer data, so that data source is directly from your prospects and your customers, making it compliant with all the new changes. So these are things that you can do very easily, and using information on channels that you already own, your website or otherwise, you can help your team, your sales team, frankly, find ways to get those customers back. Now, there's 3 reasons why people abandon carts. The first one, we can't control: interruption. Power goes out, the internet goes out. For some reason, their kids come home from school, like mine will in a couple hours, and all of a sudden you're wrapped up in your kids' days and you just forget to check out. Now, the second and third reasons here, we can influence. So limited interest, lack of commitment, lack of urgency, right? You can't supply that why now to buy something. Other reasons you can fix: price, poor technology or process. So maybe there's somewhere in the funnel of converting that to a sale that you can fix. How do we do that? Personalized customer engagement, right? So it is important to know what to say, when to say it, and who to say it to. So how does this work? We have to trigger re-engagement emails at the right time. If you don't have access to that data, you can't send an email. Having access to real-time data and pushing it through something like Snowflake and then activating it in message gears is key. Having that low latency so that you're not coming back a week later when they might have gone somewhere else already to buy that item. That's important. So each customer might also react differently, and you might have a different lag for different cohorts. Using rich customer data, we can help you build those cohorts to activate those personas. So then what is something that might prevent a purchase, right? So we have to look at how do we solve those problems. If you don't know where the customer dropped off, so earlier I referenced, and my wife does this all the time, because we've gotten all way too used to Amazon Prime, that's going to just send it without any shipping costs. The other night we're lying in bed and my wife wants to get a jersey for my son. Now, she obviously can't remember which soccer jersey to get for my son, but we're lying there and we're looking at Fanatics, great company. And she starts to go and check out, and the jersey's something like $42. It's under $50, and she doesn't get free shipping. Well, sure enough, she sits there and pauses and leaves it in her cart for a number of days. Fanatics, who's probably using something like Snowflake and Message Gears, comes back and immediately sends an email the next day that free shipping is available. So what does my wife do? Order the jersey. That's the type of information that we need and that you can use on top of Snowflake to kind of get that activation over the line. So the last step is really what I just covered: create some urgency and remind shoppers about their missing items. If you don't know what products they've looked at or what pages they've viewed, you can't personalize. Having a rich customer journey allows you to feature the right products for each email. You can add a personalized discount code like free shipping for my wife, or you combine historical transaction data using the power of a big warehouse like Snowflake to provide extra personalized product recommendations. So there's a number of basic features that we need in an abandoned cart, right? And I've kind of just talked a little bit about them, but let's just go over them and we'll talk about why this composable CDP is so important, right? Abandoned cart latency. It's a lot easier when you're using something like Snowflake and Snowplow that have ultra low latency to push that message, to make those decisions, to power those ML models so that you can score and then activate using something like Message Gears. ID resolution. This is super important. This is a reason that a lot of people come to us at Snowplow, right? Out of the box, we feature a number of IDs. We have a network ID, we have mobile app IDs, we have options for you to use your own ID, such as an email, to stitch that person together so that you don't have things like unattributed conversions, or you're not targeting the same prospect more than once, right? The most annoying thing is when you continue to get emails for something that you've already bought from the company. When I get that type of information, and when a lot of customers get that type of information, that turns them off because we're all expecting that ultra personalization nowadays. So being able to do that ID resolution for targeted email suppression or even inventory check suppression is really critical. Being able to customize a cadence for notifications, right? This is to help make sure that when you send abandoned carts, right, you're not being that nagging person that is just every 15 minutes. And I have gotten those texts, and I know we all have. You know, you left something in your cart. Did you really want to leave it in your cart? 15 minutes later. Really? Like, you guys should come back. You want to be able to customize those cadences depending on what cohort people end up in to drive abandoned carts to completion. And then through Snowplow webhooks, marketers can record, track, and calculate the success of abandoned cart emails via open rates, CTR rates that are going to interface very nicely with Snowflake and Message Gears to create that 360 loop around abandoned carts. A few other things that I would call advanced abandoned cart features. Offline purchases. So using some of our webhooks, you can create with loyalty or customer IDs an understanding that if someone went to the store and bought it, we're not going to continue to send those emails to them. So again, knowing who to say it to is just as important as what and when to say it. And then propensity for abandoned cart. I mentioned this before, and I use it all the time because we've all gotten very used to not paying shipping costs. If the shipping cart is, or if the shipping cost is so much higher than the cart value, does this lead to a lower probability of customers checking out? I would say absolutely. Or do we have promotions or coupons that we can offer to this cohort or vice versa to create the increased probability of a checkout? So just to kind of go back, all these things we've talked about sorry about that, are really data problems. And I mean that in two ways, right? The first was that low latency and having a connected app like Message Gears. And the second is being able to ID stitch that first party browser privacy proof that we supply at a company like Snowplow that allows you to stitch your loyalty, your network IDs, your emails together to create real personalized messages. Just a few other things. A lot of marketers just don't trust their customer data today. And that's what we see from people, right? We get people who are coming in because they can't personalize. They can't retarget ads. They can't increase conversion rates due to ineffective reactivation campaigns. They can't grow customer loyalty with ID resolution across different platforms or devices. That's the problem we're trying to solve. Our view of the world is that abandoned cart is really a data problem. So growing audiences, the inability to track anonymous users, ID resolution is where we get a lot of people coming to us for help. So kind of just to get back to the underlying thing here. What we're talking about is a composable CDP. I've mentioned it before. People are expecting best practices and cutting edge personalization from the likes that we get from Amazon and Netflix, right? So we're going to drill down a little bit. Customer data pipelines, everyone has one. Studies show there's 180 of them out there. Companies are spending 3.5 billion with a B in the area. 4 trillion of abandoned cart, 3.5 billion on customer data pipelines. And only say 14% of the customers have a true customer 360. Saying it a different way, packaged CDPs are the traditional solution to this, yet we are creating siloed copies of customer data that even in a warehouse like Snowflake, there's no integration around IDs. There's rigid data models. And really at the end of the day, the CDP Institute is telling us 58% of companies for the deployed CDP say it delivered significant value. So there's a lot of good tools out there, but what we're seeing with the composable CDP is people are picking tools that are best of breed for the problems they're trying to solve. We're trying to solve your problems, not everybody's problems. And personalizing to your product and your customers with granular data is the engine that a lot of marketing and sales professionals are seeing make the difference. So, a few more things here. Snowplow customer behavioral data profiles. What we really want to create is descriptive richness powered by behavioral data across your platforms that let you see the entire granular journey of somebody. Identity stitching and resolution so that you have a single view of that customer. And then with the advent of iOS 14 and ITP, ad blocking, we want to give you first party data that you own on your infrastructure that's unimpacted by privacy technology. This is going to lead to less unattributed attributions. You're going to be able to grow your audience with personalization so that when you go and use Snowflake and Message Gears to do those activations, you're going to know with more certainty that they're going to work. You can offer that next best action at the right time. You can figure out what lookalike audiences. And then you're going to be GDPR and CCPA compliant. So many acronyms. So I just want to walk you through kind of at a little bit of a more granular version how this works, right? So we have Courtney Knight. She goes searching on Google on her iPhone 13 Pro in Austin for boots. She views the different categories. She scrolls down halfway. She toggles the filter for boots. She opens 2 pairs of boots in different tabs. She scrolls to the price on page 2. She closes that. She cycles through options on another tab. She finally finds boots she likes from the first tab, adds them to her basket. Then she abandons her cart. With a lot of the third-party tools that are in the market today, if you're more than, say, a week out, you're going to lose that information. You're going to not be able to stitch that together, no matter whether you have Snowflake or Message Gears. Courtney's smart. She waits till Black Friday to buy her boots. She checks out with that boots, opens that page, then she writes a review that the color didn't match the image. She gives it 1 star. She returns the boots. With a lot of products, you will not be able to tell that information. But with all these clicks and scrolls and captures and following through the funnel, we're going to give you a rich atomic feature table that's 150 features wide and help you build a deeper customer 360 that's completely driven out of your Snowflake warehouse. You're going to know more about your customers and understand them better so that when your team reaches out to Courtney about why she wrote a 1-star review, you're going to see her entire journey. That compromise on quality is not something that you will have to deal with anymore with Snowplow and Snowflake. So there's a lot of industry leaders that love us. We've talked a lot about abandoned cart today. This could easily be translated to media for ad subscriptions or technology using something like Stripe or Square, or even finance when you're looking at a loan. There's a lot of ways that things don't convert at the end of the day. But the key is understanding why they didn't convert, being able to trace back and understand how your customers are thinking and start to look at their intent by measuring all the actions they take. So abandoned cart is kind of near the top of the maturity curve, right? It's the ability of what will happen, right? So some packaged customer data platforms can do this over varying time periods. We want to take you one step further and predict the checkout funnel stages that will likely cause abandonment. How can you change your interaction with your customers so that your abandoned cart metrics are increasing over time and you're able to activate them quickly? What we see is a lot of people engage us maybe very easily for something that just report that a cart was abandoned, but we see them quickly moving up this data maturity curve where we can trigger personalized options for those abandoned carts. We can dynamically adjust the offers in real time so that you can make the best decision for your business and your customers quickly and with confidence. So just to kind of go over this, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about this at the end, and I'm sure we have some really great questions. How do you do this? One, you put your trackers on your web, your mobile, your server, your webhooks. You feed that information into Snowplow. We'll enrich it, govern it, model it. It then ends up in Snowflake in that wide, long table. You can use a tool like dbt if you want, or you can do it yourself to model that data. And then you'll be able to really get to those correct abandoned cart activations quickly with something like Message Gears. And you'll be able to hit them on the right platform, whether that's SMS, mobile, or just activate them another way. So that is the end of my spiel. I'm sure we have some questions coming up, but I'm going to hand it back to Walter first at Message Gears, and we'll talk a little bit more in a minute.
Mike, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have picked back up control because I wanted to close us out, not only with sort of a benefits recap, but also some time for Q&A to your point. So, you know, when Luke and Mike and I were collaborating on this presentation, we sort of broke out some of the benefits of this composable connected app model that we've been talking about today. Really from a marketing perspective, it's really about better segmentation and more timely and relevant activation. So it's the personalization, it's the right time, the right device, the right message with the right combination of data. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by that in just a second. And it really does bring together the data leadership and the marketing leadership at a brand, right? And we think that's a very positive thing. So the data and analytics leadership rolling up to the CTO, working in close partnership with the CMO's organization at a large B2C brand to really take it to the next level around these behavioral data and other related use cases is highly impactful in terms of driving more customer engagement and more loyalty. In terms of enterprise-wide benefits from the connected application deployment model that we've been talking about today, this modular approach with Snowflake at the heart of it, there's just an enormous amount of benefit around implementation and time to market, for one thing, because you don't have to copy or map data to third-party SaaS solutions. You've got your own data taxonomies within your own environment, i.e. Snowflake. You've got Snowplow feeding that environment. You have message gears segmenting and activating that environment. It's your data, it's your taxonomy. You don't have to deal with any complicated deployment models with third-party SaaS solutions that have their own data models and data syncing requirements. Security is a big one that we see with our brands that we work with. So their data never leaves their Snowflake environment. They're centralizing their PII in a very locked down, secure way. The personalization power is significant, as we've been talking about, to be able to activate in a more timely, more personalized way on the right channel based on behavioral data, transaction data, demographic data. And then the TCO is significantly less because you're not being forced to take your 5, 10, 20, 30 million customer records and all the related data that goes along with that, behavioral and transactional and demographic, and recreate that in a third-party SaaS solution. That is expensive in terms of time, in terms of management, and in terms of licensing costs, frankly. You're paying to have your data stored in someone else's marketing cloud. So who's adopting this kind of approach? Here's a quick preview of some that have fully bought into the warehouse native connected application model. You'll see there's some pretty recognizable brands in here that are leading the charge on this new way of working. We have a quote here from our good friend at Rakuten about kind of the benefits of this from his perspective. It really is a dream and do type story. And then finally, I'll leave this up on the screen while we take some Q&A. And I have a bunch here that I've been writing down, guys, as you've been talking, Mike. But I really like this quote from Frank from August, because I think the perspective that Snowflake has is highly aligned to the perspectives of both Snowplow and message gears, which is the new way of working is preventing data from having to be copied to many disparate third-party locations. The perspective that Snowplow has is let's capture it, let's transform it, and let's deliver it to the single source of truth, which is Snowflake. And then message gears shares that point of view. We don't want to have to copy your data to our cloud. In fact, we don't even do that. Rather, we leverage the data that you have about your customers, their behavior, and their transactions where it already lives, which is in the brand's Snowflake Data Cloud. And there is massive operational benefit from that kind of model. So with that being said, Mike, we have a little time for questions here. And I'm going to throw one your way that you alluded to a little bit in your talk, but I think it might be helpful for the audience just to hear it in a little bit more detail. So we've dug into leveraging Snowplow behavioral data today quite a bit for abandoned cart use cases, but what are some other kind of use cases that you all see across your customer base that behavioral data is really helpful to solve for?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, right? But so we really kind of see a lot of people start off with kind of marketing attribution or kind of finding out what channels are really working. And then what we have also seen is people moving towards kind of that really high time, real-time personalization, real-time personalization where they take things right out of our stream or right out of Snowflake because we can get to that super low latency that they can do that next best action. So when you need something personalized within milliseconds, right? That's where we see a lot of people coming to Snowplow because there aren't a lot of other options to do that, right? So something like Google or that where you don't actually own the data, we see people kind of coming to Snowplow because they can control how quickly they get the data, score it, and then create either a next best action or dynamic pricing or items that way. Just off the top of my head, those are the ones that stand out. But there's 10, 20, 30 more. I mean, we're always kind of surprised, to be honest, the way people use it. There was actually, this one just came to mind off the top of my head, but people doing kind of A/B testing with their product, right? Like where to put the button to get the behavior they want, right? So might roll out 2 websites, kind of measure the reaction and the conversion among the 2 options.
Love that one. Love that one.
You're welcome. I got a quick question. Yeah, something that this quote made me think of. Yeah, at Snowflake, I get to work with a lot of our partners, and a lot of them treat Snowflake as the customer source of truth, right? One thing I wanted to mention here about being that both MessageGears and Snowplow are very unique and honestly pretty rare is that you can both deploy inside of a customer's VPC, right? So not only are you treating their customer's account as a sort the customer's Snowflake account as a source of truth of data, but you both can deploy inside of their own VPC. Can you, so 1 or 2 things from both of you on what that maybe means for an enterprise brand and why they might want to choose that over maybe a platform CDP specifically?
Yeah, do you want to go first, Walter?
Sure. I mean, I'll go first, Mike. Why not? Because maybe people are, let's mix up the voices. But yeah, we see this a lot. I'd say about 95% of MessageGears customers, which are all pretty large, brands that have millions of customers, are sort of with whom MessageGears works. Some of them are digitally native. Some of them are, have been around for 50 years. But they're all very keen on data security, right? So to be able to have your customer engagement platform live securely within your virtual private cloud as a large enterprise brand is pretty darn important. So anything that touches their first-party data is securely within their privacy and security walls. You can imagine how critical that would be for FinServ and healthcare, but we see it really universally these days. Retail, travel and leisure, hospitality, everyone is very, very concerned about locking down their PII. So that's a big part of the benefit. So Luke, I appreciate you mentioning that. And Mike, I'll let you comment as well. You're probably going to say something similar, but please do comment.
Yeah, so I would say the big thing is I think it just gives you a lot of options, right? So like there's laws like GDPR or CCPA, and at the end of the day, having that option to control not only your data, as what Walter said, but where it's processed, how it's handled, who's handling it, and kind of having that chain of custody is what truly makes it, in my mind, first-party data, whether by definition or not, right? So being able to do that and build to Walter's point, the security, the controls you need so that whether it's compliance with regulation or just your own ethical standards, which is becoming even more and more popular, right? Like there's major concerns about all the algorithms around even social media platforms or your algorithms. I think that's what we're seeing from customers who want that control.
Perfect.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for those. That's great.
I have another one here, guys. And Luke, please keep them coming if you have more from your perspective. But we have one, I have kind of a twofer here. One is, how does MessageGears leverage the data captured by Snowplow? And then, do MessageGears, Snowplow, and Snowflake share any joint customers? So those are kind of related. So let me go back to a picture that I like. This one I'll use to answer this question, which is a very good one. So, the brands that we work with together, they're doing a couple things, right? So first of all, and typically the brand's already done this before even MessageGears or Snowplow show up. So the brand probably has a long history of having customer data in some sort of centralized, and Luke will hate me for saying this, but data warehouse. And I'm talking, for the last 10 years. And it used to be more legacy solutions like Teradata and Netezza, right? So the current state of the world is brands are moving their first party data to modern data clouds like Snowflake. And so that's your customer data, your transaction data, your loyalty data, oftentimes coming in via more traditional bulk ETL processes, right? So think of that like, it's Home Depot and it's their point of sale system. So they're tracking what Luke and I have purchased at Home Depot because we give them our email address to send our receipt to, right? So that's how Home Depot knows what you've purchased and how they connect it together to your credit card and to your email and those kinds of things. So that's flowing into the brand Snowflake environment from the in-store point of sale. And then through the digital channels, you've got Snowplow capturing behavioral data. So when you combine those two things together, right, the transaction history from an in-store perspective with the digital engagement and behavior that Snowplow is capturing, you can do some very interesting things in terms of segmentation and activation, which is where MessageGears plays. So for example, and I see this a lot with abandoned cart point solutions that are out there. Ideally what you want to do with an abandoned cart use case powered by Snowplow, landing data into Snowflake that MessageGears can then activate, is you want to combine the abandoned browse information with other data about the customer that already lives in Snowflake. Things like their loyalty points status and balance, their gender, where do they live, maybe you might have whether they own a pet or not, how many kids they have, things like that. But let's just stick with the loyalty points example. So, you might want to tell them that not only will they get free shipping if they take action in the next 24 hours, but also the purchase will get them to the next level of status from a loyalty perspective. Like combining those things together, the abandoned cart data won't have that complete picture, but the combination of the abandoned cart behavioral data from Snowplow with all the other data about the customer that already exists in Snowflake enables a platform like MessageGears, because we're a connected app sitting on top of all that data, to do very, very cool things in terms of the personalization and the immediate activation by combining all those data sets together. And that is exactly the story that I just told, is very similar to one of our joint customers who is, capturing transaction data and merchants and purchase amounts and stores that they follow and brands that they follow, and that all lives in Snowflake. And then they're combining that with behavioral data that Snowplow is capturing, and then MessageGears is stitching all that together for various advanced segmentation and personalization and activation use cases. So that's really how it all comes together. It's the behavioral data plus, plus, plus. And the plus, plus, plus is all the other data about the customer that's flowing into Snowflake from other places. You bring all that together and you can do some really, really powerful stuff. So that was my relatively long-winded answer to that double question in terms of how does MessageGears leverage the data captured by Snowplow. And I kind of shared some joint customer stories there without naming too many names there. Okay, so there's another one here, and maybe this is where we might wrap unless Luke has more from his perspective, but I have one more. I have two more really. And I think the first one's for you, Mike, and I think you talked about this at the very beginning, but maybe hitting on this again. And this is the opportunity cost topic. You know, what's the opportunity cost of not doing this or just doing it for known users and not doing this and not resolving the identity of anonymous to known and all that kind of good stuff. You want to talk about that just briefly one more time?
Yeah, and I'll try not to give a long I teach economics on the side answer, but
You're good.
yeah, no. So I mean, long story short, right? I think I talked a little bit about this earlier, right? You know, not to like strike fear into anyone, but like most people are doing this nowadays, right? So like I think in, you know, especially with the shift in COVID and most things being online, and I actually have another wife story about silverware. We were lucky enough to host a lot of people for Thanksgiving this year after COVID and everything like that. And my wife does this thing where she takes forks and spoons and such, and they never return. Hopefully she never watches this webinar. Well, there could be trouble, but you know, so we went online to try to find the forks and spoons we got from our wedding. Now, little did I know they only make them for like 3 years, and then they make a new model, and the weight wasn't right. But she wanted to go feel them, right? So we went to Macy's, and there wasn't a lot of selection, so we had to do everything online, right? We got forks and spoon and knife emails, whether we were a customer or not, for a long time. So I would say there's 4 trillion in abandoned cart things. I think I mentioned the $3+ per email, which, you know, among activations is the highest of any type of campaign. If you're not doing it, someone else is. And we were buying for forks and spoons. You're kind of throwing away customers that have already shown an intent and a propensity to purchase. So whether you resolve anonymous or not, whether they're your customers, I'm not saying this is a fear thing, but like there is an absolute amount of money that is being spent on these things, and you're giving away pieces of the pie if you're not doing it. That was a rather long answer. Hopefully my wife doesn't watch, but you know, that's my take on it.
I think that's a really good topic. So you know, it's not only not taking timely action on abandoned cart, but doing it in a way that is relevant and meaningful, like some of the stories we've been telling today. So it's combining it with free shipping or combining it with other data in terms of where you live in the country or your loyalty status, or, you know, how far away you are from achieving a new level of status, and this purchase will take you there. Those kinds of use cases I think are super interesting. And then to your point, Mike, just getting a larger pie of addressable contacts to engage with for those abandoned cart use cases is super important, right? So if you're missing a portion of your known customer ecosystem because you are doing a poor job of identity stitching and identity resolution, then, you know, you're leaving money on the table because you're missing a portion of your database that is in fact abandoning their carts or their browsers. So thank you for that. Okay, final thing for you both. What do you think? What are some big predictions or thoughts for 2023 relative to what you see within your respective roles and solution areas? Maybe Luke, why don't you go first on that one, since poor Mike might want to take a sip of water.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Walter. So yeah, from the partnership side, we're seeing a lot more, a lot more partners come to Snowflake, or even prospects come to us who want to talk to Snowflake about marketing and marketing analytics use cases. So it's great to see. I think that we'll see our side push a little bit more into there, and to talk. We always talk to the data folks at Snowflake. We are a data platform, but I think we'll like we've seen in cybersecurity, you'll likely see us talk more to the CMO, I think, going into next year, and hopefully we'll see more apps like Snowplow and MessageGears build on top of Snowflake. It's great to see the momentum that both Snowplow and MessageGears have had building on top of our platform, and see all the joint customers who love all three solutions. So that's also my prediction, but also hoping more for it as well.
Got it. Mike, any thoughts from your perspective? And then I'll close this out.
Yeah, I would say, we've kind of become this very interesting world, right? Where post-COVID, a lot of shopping and interactions are done online. Events are still very important, but we've seen a lot of success with people building personalization, but at the same time, privacy is pushing back. So I do think you will see a lot more first-party data creation needed. I also think you'll see companies looking at things, pushing it one step further with clean rooms and things like that I think are going to be a big story in the next couple of years, because it's going to be really hard to do that first party personalization by yourself. So you are going to need, clean rooms, companies like Snowflake and MessageGears and Snowplow, frankly, that take some of the heavy lifting and allow you to do that very quickly. Because if you're not doing it now, you're probably playing catch up.
Agreed. Yeah, I would agree with everything you guys said. I think the pace is accelerating in terms of brands understanding the strategic nature of their first party data, and the fact that they truly need to have a strategy in terms of taking ownership of it and then monetizing it in an appropriate sort of privacy safe way. And then we're also seeing, and this is a little bit of kudos to Snowflake, I think this, and you alluded to it, Mike, this data sharing and clean room ecosystem and the use cases around it are extremely powerful and also still relatively poorly understood. But the power that just something as simple as data enrichment in real time via Snowflake and their marketplace ecosystem of data providers is so transformational for the way brands have had to work for the last 3 decades in terms of near real-time enrichment of their first-party data to power more sophisticated pricing, segmentation, personalization, you name it, is fascinating. And we're only just beginning in terms of that transformation. And that's only one of innumerable use cases around data sharing and data clean room. It just happens to be one that MessageGears is pretty familiar with by nature of what we do. So with that, I think 2023 and beyond is going to be super exciting, really all around this ecosystem that you see depicted on the screen today. I want to thank my speakers very much for their time, which I know is valuable and in short supply. And I want to thank our attendees as well for their time and attention. And with that, I will close this out and wish everyone a happy holiday. Thanks, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
Mike.
Thanks, guys.